Okay. Now we have Switzerland. Now, first thing you need to know about Switzerland, it's a confederation, right? Now, the beginning of the note says Switzerland has a federal system, but it is a specific form of federalism called the non-federal model or a confederation. Now, if we go back to the fourth unit, this is a system where a couple of independently governed regions getting together and sort of adopting one common central government to control them, right? It's like a couple of kids who are independent, capable of taking care of themselves, getting together and sort of adopting a foster father to take care of them because um, he can provide you better protection, something like that. A federal system is a system where you have a powerful father and the powerful father allows you your own, like the siblings, their own independent autonomy. Now, even in a confederation, although those are like independent kids, them getting together and adopting a foster father, later on, the father evolves with the power and becomes a typical father who has the upper hand, who grants you the autonomy in your area. So, a confederate is basically the beginning stage, in an initial stage of federalism, because a confederate later turns into a federal system gradually. Now that's what happened to the USA. They started off as a typical confederation, but today they are a federal country. Switzerland is also sort of the same. Now they are still in the process of getting evolved into a federal system, but thus far in the world, this is the closest example you have for confederations at the moment, right? So the basic character of a confederation is that a group of independent political units or states coming together to form a union with specific objectives in mind. Security and economic unity are the most common such objectives, as I explained, right? And then there's an explanation of what sort of a system Switzerland has. That they have 26 provinces which are called cantons, and they have the municipalities. Um, Now, the unique thing about Switzerland is their states have a unique name. They are called cantons. And out of these 26, 20 of them are full cantons, 6 of them are semi cantons. Um, just put a note there, which will be important later on. Right. Then let's take a look at the fundamental features of the Swiss Federation. Although it is called a federation in the constitution, the Swiss system functions in practice as a federal government. Okay, which means that you call it a confederation, but in practicality it functions as a federal government, typical federal government. The confederation became a federal system in response to invasions from France and the pressure of modernization. So, following the world wars, there are a lot of invasions coming because they are like settled in the middle, and they preferred going towards federalism from confederation, right? And there are some important important factors about the background, that how constitutional amendments came in 1848, 1874, 1999, and all that. And currently, you have a homogeneous Swiss nation rather than going as a confederation with their different ethnicities. And the main constitutional principle of the Swiss system is a combination of the two doctrines, shared rule and self-rule. Cantons can function independently as provided for by the constitution. At the same time, cantons can take part in the affairs of the central government. So, shared rule and self-rule. So, basically, they govern themselves. The Swiss cantons govern themselves and they get involved in the central government affairs also. Now, since this is a confederation, this is even more broader than the American system, where the regions can actually get involved in the central government affairs. So the regions are so powerful. I mean, it should be, because regions were the ones that adopted the central government. This is like the closest to a confederation we can ever get. So Switzerland has really powerful regions, which is not surprising because regions were the ones that adopted the central government, right? Then the constitution provisions. According to Article 1 of the Constitution, Swiss has 26 cantons and 6 semi-cantons. This is actually incorrect. You need to correct that. Either you can make the 26 20. Either you can say it has 26 cantons and 6 semi-cantons, or instead of and put including 26 cantons including 6 semi-cantons, or 20 cantons and 6 semi-cantons. You get the point. It's 20 cantons and 6 semi-cantons altogether. Totally you have 26 cantons. That's the idea. Cantons are small units of self-rule specific to Switzerland. They are the Swiss equivalent of the American states or provinces in Canada. So cantons are the word that in the USA they use the state. In Canada they use provinces. In Switzerland they use cantons. The semi-cantons have equal status with cantons. However, they have less representation. So basically, canton or a semi-canton doesn't make much of a difference. But you know that federal countries have a bicameral legislature, right? Federal countries, it's a must to have a bicameral legislature because the upper house has to be there to provide representation for people from the regional governments. So the only difference is, if you are a semi-canton, you just get one person. If you are a semi-canton, you only get one representative. You can only send one representative to the upper house of the legislature. If you are a full canton, you can send 2 people. That's the only difference, right? All Swiss cantons have their own constitutions. That's another fact. As defined in the 1999 Constitution, cantons have autonomy unless the Constitution limits it. According to the principle of the sovereignty of the cantons, each canton enjoys self-rule within its territory. And if I ask why, you can answer that with one word: confederation. I mean, it started off as a confederation. That's why each area has its own sovereignty. But you should know, in practicality, now they prefer being federal. So although the Constitution says that they are federal, in practicality, that's not exactly how it works. The central government respects canton sovereignty. However, this is not full political sovereignty, as I told you, because currently they prefer functioning as a typical federal country. So, however, central governments have to respect canton sovereignty. Now, going back to that foster father example, the foster father has to keep in mind these kids took care of themselves, and the kids sort of took you in to give them more protection. So you need to respect the fact that these kids were independent, and you have to respect their level of independence. However, in practicality, what happens is, since he's the father, nonetheless, they are sort of evolving into a system where the father gets more and more powers. The following are the limits imposed by the cantons imposed on the cantons by the Swiss Constitution. The constitutions ensure fundamental rights to the Swiss citizens. The Swiss authorities closely protect the citizens' fundamental rights. The federal judiciary has the right to review canton laws to ensure that they do not violate citizens' rights. That's basically, there's judicial review power, as you can see, right? The federal judiciary has a right to review canton laws. Okay. Too bad that Aksa had a connection issue, because she asked a question from me when I was teaching the American system, whether is it possible for the American Supreme Court to use judicial review power on state legislatures. As I said, it's not possible given how the American system works. But here you can see that in Switzerland, it is possible. The federal judiciary has the right to review canton laws to ensure that they do not violate citizens' rights. Okay, in Switzerland, it is allowed. In Switzerland, the federal judiciary gets involved in using judicial review power, that they can stop the canton legislatures from violating citizens' rights, because you have to prioritize citizens' rights. Then the second one, the central's executive and lawmaking powers also limit canton sovereignty. Now, given the fact that there is a central government and they do make laws, and that lawmaking power has to has to limit canton sovereignty at least up to a certain extent. Having a central government has to reduce the powers of the regions up to a certain extent. I mean, like, that's the whole point of having a central government, right? Then you have the way in which the constitution divides powers between the federal government and the canton government is by enumerating the central's powers in the constitution. Cantons have the residual powers or powers on subjects other than the ones given in the federal government. Again, the same principle as the USA. Residual powers are given to the cantons. Residual means the ones that are not mentioned in the constitution. So again, they mention what the powers of the central government, the remaining powers are given to the cantons. Okay. Cantons are automatically entitled to make laws with regard to areas that are not given constitution. Yes, okay, same thing. The power to amend the constitution is with the federal government. The federal government decides how power should be shared between the center and the cantons. However, this power of the center is constrained by the principle of shared rule. So the power to amend the constitution is with the federal government. That means the central government has the power to amend the constitution. The federal government decides how power should be shared between the center and the cantons. However, this power of the center is constrained by the principle of shared rule, which means the central government can amend the constitution and decide how the power should be shared between the central government and the regions. However, there's a principle called shared powers, which allows the regions, the cantons, to get involved in central government's affairs. Understand? The central government has the power to amend the constitution and determine how the power should be divided among the central government and the regions and the cantons. However, the shared rule principle allows the cantons to get involved in the decision making of the central government. So it's sort of like controls each other's powers, right? A guiding principle to Swiss federalism is the notion that the federal government allocated for itself powers regarding matters that have uniform application throughout the country. Cantons are allowed to exercise responsibilities for that they are best suited. This ensures the principle of subsidiarity, that is, empowering the lowest level of governments on subjects which they are more competent to handle. So basic idea of this is that the Swiss system allows the basic powers to the regional governments and to the lower level of governments because they are more capable of handling that. Okay. So when it comes to power sharing, the basic powers are given to the regions, the cantons, because they are more capable of handling that. Right. And the federal government allocates itself powers regarding matters that have a uniform application throughout the country. The central government only keeps the ones that can be applied everywhere in the country uniformly, right? If there's something that can be applied the same way everywhere in the country, central government keeps that. If it is something basic, where the regional government, the canton is capable of handling, you hand it over to the canton. That's a basic idea. Now there's a small note on self-rule, right? Self-rule. Self-rule means the principle that allows cantons to govern themselves. Okay, so if they ask for a small question that what are the two principles that are applied in the Swiss constitution system in terms of power sharing, what are the two rules? Self-rule, shared rule. Self-rule, shared rule. Self-rule means the cantons governing themselves. Shared rule means cantons getting involved in government, central government affairs. Them sharing the power of the central government. So you can see the regions are pretty powerful in this. Okay, right. So let's see. Now let's take a look at the self-rule powers, right? Self-rule powers. Self-rule powers means what allows cantons to govern themselves, cantons to take care of themselves. Okay. After that, you have another note called role and the role and the significance of cantons. So let's read these two. What is the self-rule? What allows cantons to govern themselves? And what makes these cantons so significant and what is their role. Okay. Then you have the referendums and stuff, which we will discuss after that. Ketu, can you read self-rule powers and role and significance of cantons?
Okay, sir. Self-rule powers of the cantons. Swiss cantons have the following self-rule powers. Canton constitutions. Cantons can draft their own canton constitutions. They can decide their political systems. Local government units. Cantons determine the powers of their local government units. However, those powers cannot violate fundamental rights of the citizens. The federal judiciary protects the fundamental rights of the citizens. Education. Education has been a traditional responsibility of the cantons, and it continues even now. Cantons have the power over curriculum, appointments, and academic staff. Public order. It is the responsibility of cantons to maintain law and order during peace times. Culture. Cantons have the power to support cultural activities and to protect cultural heritage, subject to certain exceptions. Infrastructure. Cantons have the responsibility to build roads and supply electricity and water. Direct taxation. Cantons have the power to levy direct taxes. Role and significance of cantons. The implementation of laws of the central government. Cantons are also in the implementations of laws and of the central government. Cantons are also given the powers to do so. This is based on the principle of subsidiary, whereby the lowest possible tiers of the government are empowered to do what they can do best. This has also raised the importance of cantons. There are also established practices to enable the cantons to influence federal level decision making. For example, when electing new laws, the federal government should inform the cantons. The federal legislature has two houses, National Council and Council of States. Cantons have equal representation in the Council of States. The two councils have similar powers. However, the cantons have limited influence on the Council of States because cantons cannot influence the decisions of their representatives in the council. However, they can influence the National Council indirectly through the electoral process. This is particularly so because the representatives need the support of the voters of the cantons for re-election.
Okay. Right. So you can see that there are certain principles, canton constitutions, local government units, education, public order, culture. These are the things that allows cantons to self-rule, to govern themselves, right? And you can see why these cantons are so significant. And you need to just highlight the federal legislature has two houses, National Council and Council of States. Now you saw that they have a limited influence on the Council of States because cantons cannot influence the decision of their representatives in the council. And you can see that they can influence the National Council indirectly. It's like this. This is a bit of a confusing point. Do you guys want me to explain this or not? Let's have a vote. Who wants me to explain this? Or you can just memorize that you can just memorize that the representatives, like the cantons have influence over the lower house, not the upper house. Do you want me to explain that? Gigi, what do you say?
Yeah, sir, can you explain it if you don't
Okay.
mind?
Okay, right, sure. It's like this. Now, it's a two-house legislature. Upper house is the Council of States. Lower house is the National Council, right? So the lower house is the legislative house which represents the entire country, entire Switzerland. The upper house, you have members sitting there representing several cantons. Now, the cantons can't really influence the decision of their representatives in the council because those people are not there not there representing voters. They weren't elected to that position. You just get appointed. You get appointed to be a part of the upper house of the Swiss legislature, and until you are done with your term, you are there, right? You just get appointed. You get nominated. Understand? It's similar to being a senator. You get nominated, right? If you remember in the Salisbury Constitution, we had a senate, and it was a must for the Minister of Justice to be chosen from the Senate. Why? Because those people are not bound to anyone who, they don't owe anyone who voted. They are just appointed by someone, right? Similar to coming to the parliament from the national list. It's like you are just nominated to that seat. So you don't owe anyone. True that you owe the person who appointed you. That's a different story. But you're not under the constant pressure of staying popular among the people because you are not someone who came to that position through voting, right? So the same principle applies here because this Council of State is like a Senate, which is the upper house. So the representatives in this house are not elected. Therefore, the cantons can't really influence the decisions, right? But the National Council is where you have to elect. You have to get elected through an election. So you have to be popular among the people to get the votes. So the cantons can influence their decisions. If I give you a relatable example, right? If I give you a relatable example, let's say Sri Lanka is a state in Switzerland, right? Sri Lanka is a state in Switzerland. So which means that I can go sit in the Swiss legislature. There are two houses. Either I can run for a seat, run in the election to get a seat in the lower house, National Council. Or our government may appoint me, nominate me to sit in the upper house of the Swiss legislature, Council of States. So if they nominate me, the moment I get my appointment by signing that, from that point onwards, I can't be removed until my term is over, right? And I don't owe anyone because no one voted for me. I don't have to stay popular among the people. So once I go to Switzerland and sit in the upper house, that I am going to act as an independent candidate. But if I got a seat in the lower house in the Swiss legislature by running an election in Sri Lanka, right? I have to stay popular among the people because in the next election I might lose. So that way, Sri Lankans can influence my decision, which I'm making in the Swiss legislature, if I'm sitting in the lower house only, not in the upper house. Okay, that's the simplest way of explaining that. If you all have doubts, just put a small note in the teacher's guide and write it down in a paper. The next time I'm having individual classes with you all, I'll clarify that. Okay. Right. Okay. Now we have referendums and cantons, and consensus democracy and cantons. Then you have judiciary and the cantons. Okay. These three, I'll just give you like the basic idea. You guys know what referendums are. We studied what referendums are under the 78th Constitution. It's basically asking the general public for the approval for a decision by the government. So Switzerland is like, I don't know, like the mother of direct democracy methods, something like that. Back then, direct democracy was there in ancient Greece, and now, you can't apply direct democracy. Instead, you use direct democracy methods, right? There are different methods to apply direct democracy, like referendum, initiative, recall, plebiscite, and all that. Switzerland has all these direct democracy methods. So they love having direct democracy. Especially when it comes to referendums, Switzerland has referendum, and they use referendums quite common, right? So you can see they have a lot of referendums for constitutional amendments, and sometimes um, people request for laws. People get together and sign a petition and request for laws also, right? That means that if you hear that the central government, the federal government of Switzerland are going to pass a law, about 50,000 citizens can get together and sign a petition and request for a referendum, which means that imagine we are living in Switzerland, right? And we hear, okay, take that the cattle killing, cattle slaughter law that is about to be made now, killing of cows. Now the government is going to pass this law banning the killing of cows for beef in Sri Lanka, right? So they are going to pass that in the parliament, right? That's like the general procedure. Executive decides, the legislature passes that. Now, in Switzerland, 50,000 people can get together and sign a petition. And when you send that, you ask, instead of getting it approved from the parliament, get it approved from the people. Understand? The people can ask for a referendum. That happens in Switzerland quite often. Then there's consensus democracy. Now, consensus means basically asking people what you want. Consensus democracy basically means now in these cantons, they have this very advanced system of democracy. Although you say decision making is a task of the executive, Swiss executives, canton executives do not make decisions themselves. Okay. What they normally do is they have consensus system. They talk to the legislature people, they talk to the judiciary people, judges and all, they talk to other parties which are in the legislature, they talk to other political parties which are outside who don't have the representation, they talk to pressure groups, they talk to civic organizations, they talk to teachers, laborers. So they talk to these different entities and get their input also before making a decision, right? This is what you call consensus democracy. It's a very advanced way of democracy where you take the input of everyone. The executive takes the ideas of all these people, they discuss with these people before making a decision, right? Then you have the judiciary and the cantons. The basic idea of judiciary, that the fact that now this is a unique feature about Switzerland, that the Swiss judiciary is like really weak. Now we studied that in a federal system, the judiciary has to be like really powerful. But you can see that not the case in Switzerland. Now their judiciary is like really weak, and that's actually a unique feature. But despite having a weak judiciary, the Swiss federal system seems to be working fine, which is very surprising. But nevertheless, it's working fine, right? Then of course you have another note called local government and federalism. So now they have to take the whole local government thing quite serious, because Switzerland is a geographically kind of weird country, because like they have different mountains. That's how they have different cantons. So traveling from one canton to another is a little difficult. That's why you have those trams, sort of like cable cars and stuff, from like travel from one to another canton. So because of this, the regional governments are given quite important powers. And in the next page, you can see that there's a table what sort of powers the federal government gets, what sort of powers the canton government gets, and what sort of powers communes get. Communes means the local government authorities. You know, in Sri Lanka, we have these municipal councils, urban councils, divisional councils, and all that. So like that in Switzerland, they have communes. So what sort of powers they get. And also this system, how they divide powers between federal government, canton government, and communes, makes them quite unique from other federal systems. Okay, right. So Millie, please read from referendum and cantons until it says the following table presents powers of each level of government. Okay, then from that point onwards, Jeej, you have to read the table and then the conclusion. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Oh, Millie's mic isn't working apparently. Jeej, you'll have to read.
So from where do I have to read?
Referendums, and finish up to the read up to following table presents the power. So until the beginning of the table, then Kezia, you read the table and the conclusion. Huh?
Okay, referendum and cantons. Referendum also enables cantons to participate in the affairs of the federal government. According to the Swiss constitution, constitutional amendments need people's approval at a referendum. If there is a request for a referendum, federal laws also need people's approval at a referendum. There are two types of referendum in Switzerland. Referendum is necessary for a normal federal law only when a request is made by 50,000 citizens or 8 cantons. If the majority of the people approve it, it becomes a law. Constitutional amendments and international agreements require referendum. This is how cantons are important in the referendum. A referendum requires a dual majority, a majority of the people and a majority of the cantons. Approval of majority of the people alone is not enough. Sir, how do you pronounce this word? Anybody?
Which one?
The democracy and cantons, that part.
Consensus.
Okay.
Consensus. Consensus.
Yeah. Consensus. Consensus.
Just break it into three. Break it into three. Consensus.
Consensus. Democracy and cantons. In addition to the system of shared rule, there are other mechanisms to enable cantons to join the national level policy making process. The system of consensus democracy is such a major mechanism. What it means is that the process of law making in Switzerland is one that goes through a process of negotiations, discussions, and eventually consensus among political parties, pressure groups, cantons, and local government. The system of direct democracy has also facilitated this process of consensus democracy. The executive in Switzerland is another good example of its consensus democracy. It has 7 members elected from 2 legislative houses, National Council and Council of States. They head different ministries and therefore are like a council of ministers. It has a president who is in office only for a year. President has no special powers and there she or he is only the temporary first among the equals. Thus, the executive decisions are made through consensus. Judiciary and the cantons. The judicial system has also helped to consolidate the canton system in Switzerland. The Swiss judiciary is different from other federal systems. Unlike in other federal systems, the Swiss system does not have federal or provincial courts. It has only courts established by the cantons. The canton courts can interpret as well as implement federal and canton laws. There is a federal Supreme Court, but its responsibilities are limited to appeals from canton courts and adjudicating disputes with regard to the subjects of the federal government. The federal court does not have powers to adjudicate the constitutionality of federal laws. That power is with canton courts. Local government and federalism in Switzerland. Local government units in Switzerland are diverse in the geographical and population size. Like the cantons, the local government also have constitutional protection. Their existence is derived from the constitution and not from any ordinary law. Similarly, the local government bodies have the freedom to work in collaboration with each other. Cantons laws cannot alter the local government system. Thus, the local government has a certain measure of independence from the cantons. How Swiss, how Swiss federalism differ from other federal systems. The Swiss federal system has three levels of government: central, canton, and communes, or local government. The powers among these three levels are built in a bottom-up structure and in a framework of shared rules. All three levels of government have vertical and horizontal cooperation. We can get a picture of this by looking at how the powers are divided. The local government units, which are called communes, have autonomy at the local level, and they look after local affairs affecting the daily life of the people. They enjoy self-rule. Among their responsibilities are building and supervision of the local roads, its supply of gas and water, drainage, building schools, and appointing teachers. Cantons have powers and responsibilities in relation to the identity of the canton. Their powers include subjects in relation to culture, language, education, religion, social policy, health, and social services. Central government has powers and responsibilities on matters relating to national sovereignty and national concern. There are matters relating to the military, financial policy, external relations, social security, environment, energy, and infrastructure facilities. A special feature of the Swiss federal system is that each level of government can secure finances from its own sources in order to carry out its responsibilities. The following table represents the powers of each level of government in Switzerland.
Federal government powers, federal constitution, federal institutions, foreign affairs, military and civil defense, national highways, nuclear energy, post and telecommunication, finance policy, social security and pensions, civil and criminal law, civil and criminal procedure, education, universities, energy policy, environment protection, citizenship, federal taxation. Canton government powers, Canton constitution, Canton institutions, Canton anthem and flag, intercanton cooperation, police, culture, public health, Canton roads, forests, water and natural resources, secondary education, schools and universities, environmental protection, protection of nature, citizenship, taxation specific to cantons. Powers of communes, local government, canton laws, education, preschool and primary, garbage management, canton schools, local infrastructure, local police, local citizenship, municipal tax. The conclusion. Theoretically, the Swiss constitution is a confederation because it provides for a strong cantons and local units with a relatively weak federal center. However, our discussion shows that the Swiss system of government does not belong exclusively to a confederal or federal model. From the perspective of how power is distributed, it is a system that falls between confederal and federal constitutional models.
Right. Okay. So that's a basic idea of, now you don't need to remember the things in these three lists, but you can kind of see that you can actually think with common sense and sort of like guess what comes in these three lists. So you can see the very basic ones are given to communes, and then the most important ones are kept with the federal government, and the moderate ones are sort of given to cantons, right? Okay, so the conclusion is important. Theoretically, the Swiss constitution is a confederation. I read that part. Theoretically, the Swiss constitution is a confederation because it provides for the strong cantons and local units. So basically, theoretically, it is a confederation. However, our discussion shows that the Swiss system of government does not belong exclusively to a non-federal or a federal model. From the perspective of how power is distributed, it is a system that falls between non-federal and federal constitutional models. By the way, when you say non-federal here, it doesn't refer to unitary, it refers to confederates. Okay, so this is somewhere in between a confederate and a federal system. Why would you say it's somewhere in between a confederate and a federal system? You guys know a confederation gradually moves towards a federal system, whereas USA has made its journey, and USA is actually at the moment functioning as a proper federal system. Switzerland is somewhere in between that journey. So they have moved away from confederations, and at the moment they are reaching the proper federal status. Right. So, so Switzerland is done, and after that we basically have to study the unitary formats, and that's actually easy. That won't take a lot of time, because given the fact that you all already know the Sri Lankan Provincial Council system, which we study for the 13th Amendment, and Britain is quite easy, and France is even easier because France basically doesn't have any power devolution. Right. So we shall have the lunch break, and then resume from this point onwards. Before we stop for lunch, do you have any questions? If you have any questions, please unmute the mic and ask. If not, you can go have lunch and come back by 3:30. So by 5:30, we should be able to finish. Okay. No questions, right? Okay. So let's have the lunch break, and please return by 3:30.